I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
What's going on, everyone? It's Nina Infinity. Welcome to my channel on this Wednesday. This is Breaking the Narrative, and tonight my lovely guest is Vanessa AKA Gothix. Hello.
Hello. I was jamming to your intro. I'm like, ooh, all right, I like this. I like these little bongos.
I like that song too. I'm like, this is a good song. It's one of those like YouTube free ones because you have to, you have to like sit through and like find like the stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took me a while. But how are you? I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad you're here tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm doing good. It's good to chat with you. It's always a good time.
Yeah. I mean, it's always a good time to chat with you, not with myself. Although I do talk to myself quite often. I think I'm crazy.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah, you have to kind of like just bounce ideas off yourself sometimes. That inner dialogue has to come out somehow. But it's, I really wanted to talk to you because I got to watch your documentary, and it was a really good one. I was really impressed. I have to say that there was a lot of moments in there that really hit home for me as a content creator and as someone that has like, I mean, no one's tried to cancel me the way they've tried to cancel you. I mean, I had a little mob come after me once because I made fun of what's his name? Aquaman.
Yeah.
That guy.
Okay, Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa, yeah, because I made fun of his face tattoos once, and the indigenous people didn't like that very much. They were like, no, like they got really like big mad. And I was like,
yeah,
I just don't like the face tattoos, just generally speaking. Like, it was like nothing against him. I just thought it was ugly in general. Not that like, their specific ones are ugly. I'm just not into face tattoos. Yeah, it was just my opinion. And dude, they went after me and they were like, they were going after my mom at the time because it's just crazy. It was wild, and I was like, this is insane. So when I was watching that documentary, I was like, what happened to Gothix was like what happened to me, but like 10,000 times worse. So we're gonna get into all of that, guys, and we're gonna talk about some of the stuff that's going on the Twitters. But I guess before we start, Gothix, for those of the people that don't know who you are, give a little brief introduction of yourself.
Sure. So my name is Vanessa, but people online know me as Gothix. Right now on YouTube, I'm not uploading as often, but when I do, it's mostly like social commentary. But I can't say that that's necessarily a genre of videos that I've planned on doing. I just kind of fell into it,
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of people seem to think like my entire life is built on like making opinions on politics and stuff. And
Isn't it? No, I'm just joking.
I'm like, no, it's like that's just like a 10-minute video you see of me online. I actually have hobbies. Like right before this, I was playing a video game in my living room.
Ooh.
So
What were you playing?
I was playing Rogue Company.
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard about that.
Yeah, I
Rogue
suck,
Company.
man. I'm terrible at it, but it's fun.
The Rogue Company. I'm looking it up. Game. What kind of game
Yeah.
is it?
It's a shooter.
Oh, it's like a shooter game. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. That's fun. I've been playing Mafia recently because I never
Okay.
played it before. So I started I started playing like the definitive edition, and it's been really good. And I just got into like the Mafia 2 part, but it's tricky to play it on YouTube. I can tell you that much because they have porn in it. So like,
Mm.
because they have like these magazines you can collect, and they're like old school Playboys.
Yeah.
And like I collected one, and like it popped up on the screen. I was like, no, boobies. Like, oh no. So I had to
Yeah.
like private the stream.
Boobies bad. Bad boobies.
Bad. No boobies. So I was kind of scared. It's tough to play video games on YouTube. I'm finding because it's they keep censoring you. Is it less weird in other places and other platforms?
I wouldn't say. I think every platform has its own trade-offs. Like I still think Twitch is like the dominant platform for playing games, but I mean it's Twitch.
Yeah, it's not good. But okay, let's get into this documentary because you made one. I mean, well,
one was made about me. I can't make it. I'm just if I were to make my own documentary, it would not be as nice.
What would you, if you were gonna make a documentary, what would you make it on?
That's a good question. I would probably do something on the whole trans stuff. Because that's sort of like a very interesting topic to me of how, especially how many people have sort of fallen into that. And I know a lot of people that have come out of that. And just like, getting at the root of like, how did this happen?
Right. That would be really interesting. I think that would be really interesting. But you were apparently somebody thought you were interesting. And they were like,
that's what I was told.
You're interesting. I want to make a documentary about you. Tell me how that came to be. Like the person who directed it, by the way, great job. Graham Wilson directed this documentary. Was he the one that approached you about it?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did it happen? How did he meet you? How did he come to find your channel, to know you, about your story? How did that go?
Yeah. So the story is that he had randomly found me in the algorithm. And initially when he saw my video, he was like, who is this liberal looking woman? Because he saw how I was looked in my thumbnail, and the title of my video was White Privilege is a Crutch. And he's like, okay, this person's going to yell at me for being white. He clicked on it, and I'm saying anything but liberal stuff. And a few weeks after that, I guess he had some type of like corporate client that he was working with. And he was just in charge of editing videos for them. But there was one video in particular that he couldn't consciously edit. And so he told them, he was like, hey, I'll edit all of these other videos for you, but this one in particular, I can't in good faith do it. And so his client pretty much just said, okay, well, you're not going to work with us anymore. So they dropped him from the contract. And then and then he was like, okay, I guess he told himself like the next thing I'm going to work on has to mean something. And so he just started going down a rabbit hole of my videos, and he was like, this girl seems very interesting. Let me reach out. He sent me like an email, and I ignored him.
As you do on the internet.
It's weird. Man, if you get an email from someone saying, hey, I want to make a movie about you, like that sounds weird.
It does.
So I ignored him, but he was very persistent, and eventually he showed up in my chat, and I think he sent me a super chat, and I was like, all right, fine, I guess I'll respond to you.
I guess since you're throwing money at me, I'll see what I can do now.
Well, that's pretty much how it started, and then once we had a Zoom call together, the reason I said, okay, I think I can trust this guy is because his family walked in the background of the shot. I'm like, oh, he got a family. So if he was like a serial killer, like I don't think he would bring his family.
No, he like it's like it legitimized him a little bit more, humanized him a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's good. And so that's funny too, because of what you just said about how he found you. Like that's kind of how I felt when I found you. So when I found you, because I found you through like the FNT guys and like, just kind of like, how like YouTube recommends like everybody you like, subscribe to, likes and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this girl, she looks really weird. Like she looks like she's a leftist. Like, and I don't get her vibe. Like it's very leftist looking. Like you look like an SJW. So I started to like watch some of your stuff and I was like, this is the wildest thing I've ever seen. She is like the complete opposite of every SJW that there's ever been, but she's taking back the style. And I was so into it. I was like, yes, girl, like, yes, we need to take back like all these styles that they've stolen from us, like the colored hair. And like, I just noticed Melanie Mack when I got her hair like bright red. I was like, yes, like we need to be taking back these styles. But that's what really actually drew me to you, was that kind of like that you looked, I'm sorry to say this, but you look weird. So I was like, oh my gosh, she's so weird, but I like her.
Yeah.
In a good kind of way, weird.
Yeah.
And interestingly, also in the documentary, there was a part, spoiler alert, there was a part where he interviews like a friend of yours that was a Republican, but she looked kind of interesting too, let's just say. And then like he stopped the video and he was like, don't judge a book by, yes, she's a Republican. Don't judge a book by its cover. And I was like, I totally did. Because when I saw her, I was just like, there's no way she's a Republican. But, it happens. The same thing happened with you. And people do judge by like a book by its cover all the time. So do you find that you get that a lot? Like people are drawn to you because of the way you look, like, and like your way, your makeup, your hairstyle, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's so weird because if you're not judging a book by its cover, some people will judge a book literally based on, two things you post on Twitter or a video on YouTube.
Sure.
So it doesn't really end anywhere. But yeah, as far as the looks thing, I feel like I can go incognito. I call it incognegro because I'm black. You can go incognegro and infiltrate the leftist, group because you sort of look like them,
That's amazing.
And then you'll just dumbfound them because what comes out of your mouth is totally opposite of what that uniform would normally entail.
Yes.
So yeah, it definitely works for me. And to be honest with you, I feel like in a way I also piss people off by doing that too, because it's like they feel, especially if I'm saying something that they disagree with, they feel betrayed. I don't know.
Yeah, because you're like, you're supposed to be one of us. Like, how could you be talking like that? Like, no way. Let's watch the trailer for the documentary before we get a little bit more into it, because I want people to kind of get the feel of what it's like, because it's very professionally done. And I really, really, the editing, the shooting, cinematography, everything was very nicely done. So I want to show that to everybody.
Taking on the iconic role and becoming the first Black Ariel.
Disney has found the new Ariel.
Taking on the iconic role and becoming the first Black Ariel.
Uh-oh.
Ariel, the Little Mermaid, is going to be black. Drown mad about it.
White people are big mad about a Black woman portraying Ariel. Racist ass behavior needs to be called out.
I guess Ariel is of Norwegian descent, or is it Swedish or something?
Guys, let's go.
For something different.
Something different.
Seeing people automatically say, okay, the reason you have a problem with this is because you're racist is an issue for me.
I always thought the same way. Like me, I'm a big comic book fan. To me, what comes first is a great character before their ethnicity, because that's not what defines you.
I chimed in. I said, we need to stop doing this.
None of the messages and DMs or comments I got were actually constructive. Everything was, I was trying to appease the white folks.
I'm talking in a matter of 24 hours. How dare I? An anti-black streamer who hates black women, who supports racists and white supremacists, spreads harmful rhetoric for the black community.
I think a lot of people cut her loose today. And hey, people gave you the rope. She be putting on whole ass minstrel shows.
And it's sad because I used to like her.
They would chat while I'm live to persuade my viewers to unfollow me and stop supporting me because I was, quote unquote, an anti-black.
Despite me taking sporadic days off here and there, I think it's time for me to take a break. I hope that I can bounce back from this cloud that's happening right now, because I don't like the feeling.
Amazing. So good.
What's up, y'all? I hope everyone is adjusting to this dumpster fire of a year, or whatever the hell is left of it at this point. So this video is going to be very different from my normal content, and I suspect I'm going to piss off a lot of people.
I love that.
And I did piss off a lot of people, and I'll do it again too.
I'll do it again too. I love that. You know, I went through a lot of emotions watching your documentary. I had tears in my eyes when you talked about how you needed to take a break. That scene was in the trailer. When you were telling your audience that, like, I can't do this anymore and I want to take a break. It really hit on a lot of levels for me as a content creator myself, because it sometimes feels like you're kind of surrounded by a lot of fakeness. So you try to kind of like navigate these waters, and I don't think most people know what they're going to get themselves into when they start content creating, because I sure as hell didn't. And like, you kind of like, especially when you're someone like me, you take everyone at face value for the most part. And then they kind of like, they just turn out to be completely different than who they, present themselves to be, or they say things that are completely different than what they actually think in real life. And so that part was really heavy. And I don't even know like how to ask this question, because I feel like it must have been something so tremendously difficult for you to have to step back. But the way it started was that you just shared your thought about this movie, Ariel, this Little Mermaid, that it wasn't necessarily the right casting. Like, all you said is you don't think that it's that everybody should be called racist because they think that it was wrongly casted.
Yeah.
So like, that idea is just, it's so intense in itself that so many people would just react so badly to it, because what you were saying wasn't that big of a deal. And so when I was watching the documentary, it was really interesting to me, because the timing of it really didn't, like, I was like, it was kind of aligning for me when I saw it, but because I met you later on, because I met you when you were in your YouTube career and you had already been canceled and had risen again, and you had come back, and you were doing really well on YouTube. And then right around that time is when The Little Mermaid was in the news again. So like, we were talking about it on Toxic Femme. I was talking about it. And I was like, I'm not ever going to watch this movie, because The Little Mermaid is my favorite movie of all time. I'm not doing this to myself. And so when you told me that you got canceled over The Little Mermaid, I was like, when was this? Like, when does this even happen? Because you got canceled in the first wave of it.
Yeah.
And so can you like expand, I guess, on how it was that you really decided to bring yourself out of that depression? Like, because it must have been so difficult. And when you're a content creator, when you go through something really difficult in your own life, like I went through a loss a few years ago, I still had to push through. Like, even if you're like depressed or whatever, you have to push through. So what did you do to come out of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a process. As you saw in the doc, it's like I would keep trying to come back, take a week off, take a month off, come back for a little bit, and it was difficult. But I think the biggest thing, like in hindsight, if I think back to all of that, is I had at the time lost so much, like, that it was sort of like, what do I have to lose at this point? You know, I pissed off so many people. What's a few more people? All of my friends stopped talking to me. What's a few more friends, you know?
Sure.
And so, and the thing is, it wasn't me doing that out of spite or bitterness, although I was definitely angry and bitter and depressed. It was more so like, I knew what I was saying was reasonable. I knew it was the right thing to say. I don't think people should be accused and slandered just because they have an opinion over a movie. And I was like, I'm just going to stand my ground. And if people hate me for it, who cares? It's the right thing to do. And now that I've gone through that, as traumatic as it was, I feel so much more free now. Like,
I'm sure.
If people want to cancel me now, it's like, this is not my first rodeo. This will not be my last rodeo. And, the only reason why cancel culture is so bad for people, and in my experience, is definitely not the worst. Like, real cancel culture, there are people that have been like hurt physically over cancel culture, you know?
Yeah.
But the reason that I think it's so bad is because a lot of people put a lot of, how do I say this? It's like people worship the god of acceptance, because I think people are naturally very tribalistic. And when I had quit my job, I'm like, this is my job. I need to get attention. I need to make money. I'm a streamer. And if you know that you require the attention of an audience to be able to make money, it's like most people are gonna be like, maybe I should watch what I say, is sort of like, just go along with the flow,
skirt the line.
Yeah. And I was at that point where I was like, money doesn't even matter anymore. Like, I just don't care. Let's burn it all.
Yeah. You gotta burn it down.
Yeah, burn it down.
No, yeah, I totally get that. Actually, recently I attended another canceled individual's stream. She was having a cancel-iversary, and her name is Kara Creates, and she actually works for Eric July, who was actually part of this documentary as well. There was several scenes with Eric on there, and I thought that was cool to see him featured in there. Because he also introduced me to a lot of the ideas as well, like in terms of like libertarianism and tokenism. Like, he introduced me to that idea of tokenism and all of the stuff that he talked about. And I thought, wow, like that is so true. And he really very eloquently put in words what I couldn't really quite put my finger on it at the time. And Kara was also canceled by the mob. Because she, basically kind of, made some comments about the LGBTQ crowd, mainly the T's. And they kind of, came after her for like several-year-old tweets. And, she was working for this gaming company. I forget what it was called right now, because who cares?
Who cares?
Because they're terrible. But a limited run games, I think that's what it was. They're trash. They're trash now, and they're going to be trash forever. But now she's doing so well because, she got a job with Eric, and she decided to, not let it defeat her, just like you didn't let it defeat you. And I think that's a big thing, like that, when we talk about like stunning and brave all the time in the media about women being stunning and brave, I think what you guys did is stunning and brave. I think you guys, because you stood up to the mob. I mean, some of these people are crazy.
They're nuts.
They want you to kill yourself. Like, it's like that kind of thing where they're constantly badgering you and hammering you, and they want you to end yourself. And it's like, you feel like maybe you should, you know what I mean? And it's really, really rough. And it was really cool to see you guys be examples of sometimes you don't have to give a fuck what these weirdos say, and I just want to tell you that you are somebody who people are looking up to now in different ways, in that sense, because I do. Like, I think that that's really cool, and it's really encouraging that you are somebody who stood up to that. And I want to thank you for doing that.
I appreciate that.
There was other parts of the documentary that were really fascinating as well. The second half was a little bit different than the first half, because in the first half, you're kind of talking about your cancellation. You're talking about what you went through with all of that, the emotions involved and everything that happened leading up to that. And then in the second half, you talk about your kind of like, you're coming back, and also your political phase of entering this kind of like talking more about politics, excuse me, because of what was happening back then with the Summer of Love. Before that, though, one of the things that I noticed about the documentary, and I was thinking about it, was that I think, especially the first half, like maybe not so much the second half, because it is very adult content in terms of like what you're talking about. But in the first half, I thought that it would be really cool to actually show it to kind of like kids that are growing up now, like teenagers that are growing up, and they're constantly like let's say begging, like telling their parents that they want to become YouTubers, they want to become content creators, they want to become Twitch stars, whatever. I think it would be really cool to show kids this part of this documentary, because it shows that it's not all fun and games. It's not all, the limelight and everything like that. There's a big negative side to it. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, do you have anything add to what I'm saying? I know I'm just mostly talking here, and I don't even know.
No, I mean, hey, it's your show. You can do whatever you want. I mean, it's funny because like before I got canceled and I was just on Twitch, I actually I offered stream coaching for other streamers. So that was part of why I think the whole cancellation thing was so difficult for me, is because a lot of the people that were coming at me were people that I helped with their own stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, they came to me for advice, like, hey, how do I grow my channel? And so I would make the videos and tutorials and offer coaching and all that stuff for people. And now when someone who's young says, I want to be a streamer, I'm actually very hesitant to even say, like, go for it. Put anything you put your mind to. Now I'm like, I'm not quite sure, because the dynamic of the internet is so different, Like, I remember when I started using social media as a teenager, and it was so different than it is now. Like, cancel culture wasn't really a thing. At least it, like, online cancel culture, like back in the day, for me, it wasn't like how it is now. And now it's gotten so bad, like, you can't even breathe, let alone exist on the internet, before someone thinks what you've said or how you look like is offensive. They'll contact your family, your job. They'll try to basically end you. And I don't know. I think there's something alluring about being a content creator because of the fact that it seems easy, which is what I thought when I started doing it. I'm like, I'm going to make a lot of money. It's easy in a way, but I think people should try to get something else instead of pursuing content creation. Because, like, even me now, it's like I really want to be an entertainer. I just don't know if the medium of me doing it on the internet, how I had been doing it, is the way that I want to move forward. Like, I'm actually considering, like, okay, where do I take this now? Because I've done the YouTube and the Twitch. Like, what else is there?
Right. What's next? Well, now you're a documentary star. I mean, maybe it'll go to the Oscars. Can you imagine?
Who
You're like an
knows? I
Oscar
would get
winner.
kicked out of the Oscars.
You're like, get out. What did you say about the Little Mermaid?
Yeah.
We like Disney owns freaking the Oscars. Okay. What did you say? Get out.
Right. Well, I could just call myself queer and then I would be able to say
You're
whatever
in.
I want.
Yeah, you're in then. You're in. Yeah, that is a thing. You know, it's fascinating what you're saying though, because I've been having this conversation actually with my sister-in-law because you know, my little nephew, he's 8 years old, and you know, he's into the YouTube thing and he's watching his shows on YouTube, and he's like, you know, now when you're asking him like, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, a couple of years ago, I'd be like, I want to be a police officer, or I want to be a fireman, and now it's I want to be a YouTuber. And it is difficult to make like the younger generation realize that it's not what you're seeing on the screen. There's a lot going on behind the screen as well, just like with regular TV. Because I mean, like, remember back in the day, like when we were growing up, we just had regular TV and like, you know, TV shows and stuff, and then people would be like, I want to become an actor and I want to be a star. And then they would go to like LA and they had to get on casting couches. They'd be like, oh no, like this, it's very dark.
Yeah.
Very dark side.
You actually just reminded me another reason why I think content creation is so alluring is because of attention. It might not even necessarily be this is a quick way to make money. It's just people like the idea of being seen. And I think if they know they're going to get admiration from a bunch of strangers online, I mean, you see it just in like, you know, on Instagram, it's like if you upload a photo and you don't get any likes, you think people think you're ugly, you know? It's like, and then it becomes addicting. Like, oh, I tweet this thing, I post this picture, I get lots of likes. It becomes like an addiction in a sense.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself is a problem because people are looking for love in the wrong places.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's kind of a dopamine hit, right? Like that whole, like, and they get addicted to it. Like, oh, I need more likes. Because I need validation. And perhaps like that's one of the reasons that that we're kind of falling into this pattern. It might be because life is changing in a sense that, like, you know, familial life is changing. Like, we don't have as much of a nuclear family as we used to. Like the nuclear family is basically almost destroyed, if you will, because of what happened with feminism and neo-feminism, and you know how they've been trying to destroy this kind of like holistic family that we like you and I grew up with when we were younger, and that we like. I knew way more kids that their parents were together when I was younger than I do now. I mean, everybody's basically divorced now. So so now like all these, and I say this as a child of divorce and a single child. So like now all of us have like that single child syndrome where we're like constantly looking for validation because we're not getting it from either parent or something. So I feel like it's becoming this, it's like a reflection of what's happening in society, is that, you know, the social media is reflecting what's happening in our reality, which is that we need help. Like desperately, we need to fix what's going on. Within our families.
I think that's accurate. My parents are divorced as well. I'm not a single child, but I mean, I can understand, you know, especially me going to school. I was sort of the nerd. I was never the popular kid either. So it's like I didn't really have many friends. And then I go on social media, I become a Twitch streamer, I make all of these friends, or at least people that I thought were my friends.
Yeah.
And then
friends.
Yeah. And then it turns out, because we were talking earlier about, you know, having trust issues within content creation. And, you know, I would go to TwitchCon with my husband, and come to find out he always had these weird feelings about people that were coming up to me and saying, Gothix, I love you. And I just didn't pick up on any of that. And I think maybe it's because I was so eager to make friends and stuff like that. But he was always like, that person is sus over there.
Sure.
And he was right about all of them. And I'm just like,
my husband's the same way. Like he'll like call certain people. Like he'll be like, I like this person a lot. Like they're so cool. They're like this, and this. And then he'd be like, watch out.
Mm-hmm.
Watch out for that person. I'm not getting a good vibe. And then I immediately have to listen because he's been right about so many times. Like he's got a good track record. So I can't be like, oh no. Like it's every time he says that to me, I'm like, oh no, he's probably right. Like I'm probably not picking up something because I have like these rose-colored glasses or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I think this person's great. But I tend to think the best of everybody. It's to a fault.
Yeah.
Now on the second half of the documentary, like I said, you kind of start by talking about Thomas Sowell. And I wanted to ask you, because I guess you discovered him a little bit later in life, right? Like, I mean, you're a little bit older when you discovered him. And the way you were talking about him in the documentary, you were saying kind of like how he changed your life. And I'm wondering if you can expand on that a little bit, because I find that the younger generation of Americans, especially Black Americans, need to know who this man is and need to know about his teachings. So can you kind of expand on how you found him and, what books you read or what things you saw that really rang for you about what he was saying?
So Thomas Sowell, as far as him, so he's a really famous economist, and he changed my life because at the time, when I was getting canceled, I was desperately searching online for Black people that thought like me. I was literally typing in Google, Black people who don't support Black Lives Matter, Black people who don't support this, because any person who was Black that I spoke to about my opinions on the political arena and all the social things happening in the world, almost everyone I was speaking to didn't understand where I was coming from. And I'm like, am I crazy? Like, is something wrong with me? And this is one of the reasons why I reject this idea of saying that I'm a Black woman, and I'd prefer to say I'm a woman who happens to be Black, because I'm trying to make the separation of me implying that because I am Black, I hold a certain unique set of values and beliefs than white people do. Like it's some people think that their identity derives from their skin color, and I think that is backwards, and it's what leads to that tribalism that you saw in the documentary. It's like, oh, you're Black and you have these opinions. When I watched the Uncle Tom documentary, which I always recommend to people to go watch it, and then they mentioned this Thomas Sowell, and I'm like, I've never heard of this man before. So I look him up, and I'm finding old interviews, old debates, old lectures from this guy back in like the 60s. And I'm like, he's literally talking about a lot of the things that I'm thinking now. And so he identified the root problem to a lot of the issues way before I did. How come I never heard about this person? I think that's intentional. I think there are the powers that be don't want people entertaining other opinions for a specific reason.
I'm with you on that, and I think that there's certain people, especially like a few Black people. I often think about this with about Tupac too. I know that sounds really weird, but Tupac was kind of like a philosopher and a poet before he before he got betrayed and started like really going to gangster rap and things like that. I don't know if you ever caught like some of his like speeches like that he would give to Black youths and stuff like that, and like the underground. He was kind of like a philosopher, and he would actually be talking to them and like trying to get them off the streets and telling them like how they should respect their moms, their women, and like don't become single father, or don't leave your women to become single moms and stay with the family. And like he was basically telling the Black kids what they needed to hear, because they didn't have usually father figures. And so when that happened, like it's the same thing with Thomas. And I feel like there's a certain section of Black men especially that is like as if the powers that be don't want other, especially Black people, to find them, because they're saying things that are very anti what they want you to think, that they're the wrong thinkers. So they can't be in the zeitgeist. They can't be popular. And I think it's a crime. It really is, because more people should know of him. And it's almost it. Can you imagine what your life would have been like if you were introduced to him at a much younger age? Don't you think you would have made much more different decisions?
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. I think one of the biggest one that comes to mind is, the period in my life where I was thinking based on race, like, me voting for Obama. I'm going to vote for Obama. Why? Because he's black. That logically does not make any sense.
Right. That's so fascinating, because I went through that thing too with Obama, and I'm white. Well, white passing. I mean, I'm still kind of wondering what I am. I'm almost 40 years old, and I still don't know, because I'm Persian. So technically we're like, Aryans, which is, what the Hitler people liked. They're like, oh, you got to be Aryans or whatever. But then we're Middle Eastern. So the Americans think we're brown, and we're from like the sand and Iraq area. So we're not technically white to them. So really, I don't know what I am. I'm white passing, I guess. I don't know, brown passing.
You have privilege of some sort.
I have privilege. Okay. At least I know I'm a woman. I know that I have a privilege there. Look, my point is that I even went through that phase with Obama. When Obama was running, I was like, yes, first black president. Like, the society's changing. And like his whole thing was hope. And, I have my show's called Infinite Hope. I was all about hope. I was like, yes, like the world is changing. The vibes are, this is changing. We're gonna have world peace. The first black president is gonna bring world peace. What did he do? He did the opposite.
Did the absolute opposite. Which is honestly, in retrospect, it's actually hilarious to think about. Like, despite the fact, like, I recognize there's problems in the world, but you gotta laugh at it. The guy literally made racism worse. I can't believe it.
He did. And then he introduced like CRT, and he introduced like, more division, and like, how like black people are having it so bad now in America. Even though he's president, he's all talking about how there's systemic racism now. And like, I'm like, bro, you're president. Like, I don't understand. Like, what else can your society do? Because you're president now. They came and they voted for you en masse. Like, all the white people, okay? All the people like me were like, yes, we need a black person in the office now. But apparently none of that is good enough. And so that, like, those things are wild to see in history. And I think that's one of the reasons that your documentary is also so fascinating, is that it goes through this period of time where, like, from 2019 to basically 2023, and how crazy the world became. Like, I mean, it's kind of insane, because you went through the pandemic. I mean, you went through like basically kind of like the TDS, because Trump had just been elected a few years before that. So you were going through the TDS thing, and then, the cancellation thing happened, and then Summer of Love, have George Floyd happen, Summer of Love, and then the pandemic, and now we're here. And it's such a fascinating look into all of the things that went down. And that's just in itself, is worth the watch, just to see, like, the time is fascinating, the time changing. There was, what else did I want to talk to you about? At the last bit of in the very last bit, you talked about your reconnection with God and finding your spiritual self again. And I'm wondering if you can kind of expand on that a little bit, because I know that were you always Christian, or
no.
Was this the first time that you found Christianity in Jesus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before that, so the timeline here is high school. I was a Wiccan, and I think a lot of that was motivated because it's like, you're in high school, everyone's like edgelords,
Sure.
And I didn't have any friends, and the friends that I did had were into witchcraft, so I'm like, I guess I'm a witch.
Yeah. I went through that phase too.
But and then after that I became agnostic, which is like, okay, I think there's something out there, I just don't really know what it is. Some Christian woman screamed at me because she said I was going to go to hell, and that kind of scared me, so I'm just going to be agnostic and just sort of, I'm going to play it safe.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's pretty much how it was, like, after senior year. Well, I didn't senior year, I dropped out of high school, but what it would have been senior year to a couple of years ago was just me being agnostic. I was still very deeply anti-Christian, very much so in high school. I tell the story of me throwing a Bible in the toilet at the girls' locker room in high school. That's how much I hated people talking about God.
Were you just anti-Christian, or were you anti-religion in general?
No, I was anti-Christian.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because there's this common there's this common belief within Christianity that you can sort of like look at the landscape of society and see that Christianity and Jesus, they get picked on a lot. Like in comparison to other religions, they get picked on a lot. And so I knew of other religions, but for some reason, the idea of Jesus and Christianity pissed me off. And in the Bible, it says that even demons know that Jesus is Lord. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess in hindsight, that kind of makes sense. But in any case, like I did not like the idea of Christianity because I had a lot of friends that were gay. I had friends that were Wiccan, and I was like, what do you mean these people are going to hell? Like, these are my friends. Like, and I didn't have any context. I just thought every Christian that I met was a bigot because you say Christian, I assume I know every single thing about your worldview, and that must mean that you hate me. And so Graham is the person that shared the gospel with me when he reached out. We were recording and stuff, and we would have some downtime. Like I mentioned in the documentary, he just started talking to me because I was dead, like spiritually. Like if you looked at me, you're like, this girl, she's gone. I wasn't feeling anything. And yeah, but he shared the gospel with me, and it was at the right time. Because, before I would just be like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about God. It's not my thing. But yeah, that's, it's like, I can't describe it, man. It's like the veil getting lifted. It's so weird.
Sure.
And then when I got to that point, I'm like, do you know that movie? Well, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. You know, the Jim Carrey's The Grinch?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So there's a scene in the movie where the Grinch is laying on the snow and he's like, I'm feeling. And that's literally how it felt with me. I'm just like, what is happening to me? Like, something is off. It's so supernatural. It's
like
weird.
you had a block and it was lifted from your heart or whatever it is that like was blocking you was just, it left. So then you were able to feel and you were able to kind of like get back to yourself kind of thing. And I think that's one of the things that I feel like what's going on with our society again also is that we've lost such a spiritual connection with God, whatever that is for whoever. Because I mean, obviously there's different faiths. Interestingly, I think the word for me is agnostic technically because I'm not of a religion specifically. Like I don't subscribe to any religion, but I am spiritual and I do believe in God. Like I think God exists. I just see God more like the universe, power, energy, in terms of like, it all encompassing. Like there's a greater power. Yes, I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's out there. And there's no denying it. I've had certain experiences where I've been like, there's nothing that can prove this other than the existence of God. Like there's certain things in nature or there's certain things that, happen to you personally. And you're like, the only thing that can explain this is God and faith. And that's how I feel about God. Grumpy said it's the force. And, you know, in a way, yeah, it is. Like, I feel like the force is God. And I'm fine with that idea of like being agnostic, if you will. Although I do think that agnostics are a little bit more wishy-washy with regards to like spirituality, because they're like, I mean, yeah, I guess it's out there, but who cares?
I think, I mean, and I could be biased because I was agnostic. I think agnostic is a good place to be for the time being, because it at least it tells me that you're open enough, and I encourage anyone who is in that zone to keep seeking, keep knocking, because if you know, and this was sort of illustrated in the documentary, is that once you're hungry for truth and you're on that path, eventually you're going to end up at something. And like with atheism in particular, I've met a lot of atheists who have come to Christ, but me speaking to atheists, generally they're sort of like, there is no God. And there's no consideration. There's no like, well, maybe you're wrong. Like, have you contemplated that? So with agnostic in particular, it's like, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And I would encourage you to keep looking. I used to call it the universe too. And sometimes I do think, like, in hindsight, like, wow, all the things that have happened in my life these past couple of years, it's like it's so orchestrated that a randomized event in the universe or energy, I don't think could be I don't think it's possible for that to happen. Like, I believe in some coincidences, but the last couple of years, it's like, that's a very detailed, specific, finely tuned coincidence.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what I've come to like have happened to me as well. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, that is just, it's just so, it's got to be like the greater power. That's what I'm talking about. And that's why I do believe in God. You know, I think that he's, she's, whatever, it's real, but really, I guess it's about perception at the very least of how you perceive it to be. Now, and I really do like especially positive teachings of Christianity. I vibe with that, you know. I like the teachings of Jesus. Believe it or not, there's some things about Islam that I like too. Like, I think because I obviously grew up in an Islamic country and I was taught the Quran when I was little, and I thought about it. There's certain teachings in Islam that are very peaceful and loving as well. I know it sounds really wild because Islam does not have that what's it called? That face. It's not really well known, but it is. There's a relationship. That's why the Muslims love Allah so much, is because there's that relationship with God that is kind of inexplicable in that sense, but also very loving. So I like taking things from all religions and kind of like understanding that that's what spirituality is in generally speaking. And I think that that's what we've lost in society, is this connection. No matter what it is, there's way too many atheists out there now, and I think that that's a problem. Okay, like you need to have a belief in something, because if you don't, then you're gonna go astray. And like, that's how that's kind of like how I feel about it. I think like the atheists are kind of running wild out there, and it's just like, okay, you need to have some sort of spiritual connection to something.
Careful, you gonna get canceled by the atheists now. You thought
I know.
You thought the wokies were bad? Ooh.
Oh shit! Sorry, atheists. I mean, it's fine that you don't want to believe in anything either. I just don't see how. I was atheist for like 5 minutes, literally.
Just
like
5 minutes.
Yeah, it was literally like. It was such a short time, because for a while, because I, you know, obviously you get really mad at certain times in your life, and you're like, you know, you're a teenager or whatever, and you're like, I'm angry at everything, and God sucks, because you know, there has to be like, there's no way there's a God, or else there wouldn't be like hungry people, or there wouldn't be like this, and there would be like anything bad happening. So of course you go through that phase, and then like I said, like, but then happens to you where you're like, that's God, because I don't know what else it can be but God, right? And like, that's what happened to me. And it happened to me really, really freaking fast when I was going through that atheist phase. It was just like, nah, like God is there. You just have to like have, you know, it's
you
like
you got to be open to it.
You got to be open to it. But it's like, that's a Christian saying, actually, right? Like, let those who have eyes see and those who have ears to hear, right?
Yeah. And there's also the parable of the four, I forgot what it was. It was about soil, and how basically a parable of a farmer throwing seeds on the soil, and depending on where the seeds land, if it's not good soil, it's not gonna blossom into anything. So you need to have good soil. Some people, like when you throw seed on just gravel and thorns, it's gonna get choked up. It's not gonna grow up into anything. And some people are so consumed with, whether it's their pride or maybe they're so consumed with their worldly issues, like, you know, just they're not there yet. And like I said, I was throwing Bibles in the toilet in high school. My soil was not ready.
Well, and that's the other thing too, right? Like, and I think one of the reasons that we had such a bad reaction to COVID in general is part of the reason that we have such a disconnect with our spirituality now. Because we all have like such a, like as a society in general, like there's such a lack of spiritual connection that death is kind of like, especially for people who are atheists, like this life is it, like that this is it. There's no life after death. There's no spiritual aspect to anything. So like that's it. So in this life, if you die, like you can't see past whatever it is now. So you don't have a very healthy relationship with death or what comes after. And therefore, you're going to live life to the greatest fear, to the great extent, right? Because you're like, I gotta stay alive no matter what. That means I gotta vaccinate myself, or if I gotta wear a mask or whatever that means, I'll do it because I want to stay alive. It becomes very like, I don't know, you have this kind of like the need to survive, right? Like that need comes out, and sometimes it might be a really ugly look to you, because you know it's not when you're in a fight, like if when predators are fighting, right? Like when you're fighting for your life, it gets vicious. And that's what we became vicious during COVID, because we all, I feel like so many of us have such an unhealthy relationship with spirituality and loss, and we couldn't accept it.
I mean, you see it a lot with like the climate people, where they're like, the world is going to end in 5 years. We have to stop fossil fuels. And it's like,
God, yeah.
It's like, okay, well, if the world's going to end in 5 years, then what's the point of you doing activism?
I know.
You know, like this is it for them. This is their heaven. So they're going to make it as nice as they possibly can, because there's nothing after that. Yeah, and even like the social justice in general, like if it's someone who's protesting against ending racism or ending white supremacy or ending all of these different things, it's like I have empathy for these people, because they don't understand what they're asking, and they're essentially asking for they seem to think that they can fix a spiritual problem with more political action and more activism.
Yes.
You know? Because what you're talking about, okay, racism, what is that? Racism is hate. Hate comes from where? Your heart. How do you change your heart? And what is your standard of hate? Where do you get that from? What is hate? What is not? You know, like
Well, and speaking of that, because you mentioned like when you were adverse to Christianity, like you didn't like Christianity. You didn't like it because you had this vision of how Christianity doesn't accept gay people or Wiccans or whatever. Has that changed for you now that you are Christian? Because like, do you still like have gay friends, or do you know Wiccans that, you know, you are accepting of? Like, how does that work with your spiritual life now?
Yeah, I mean, a Wiccan came to my wedding. She was confused because she didn't know that I had turned to Christ, and so the pastor's up there talking about God. She's like, "What the? She's like, what is going on?"
That's funny.
And yeah, I mean, I still have some gay friends. I think honestly, after I had realized that my heart was getting softened and I was drawing near to God, I was still very resistant because I had already lost so many friends with the political stuff. And then I'm just contemplating in my head, it's like, I know what Christians think about homosexuals, and I'm going to lose a lot more friends. But there was just this pull that I just could not ignore. And it's like, I want that. Because my husband, he converted to Christianity before me. And instantly his demeanor changed. Because he was sort of going through a funk too. Because it's like the middle of COVID, we got all this political divisiveness. And his demeanor he was like glowing, so happy. And I'm like, this is some supernatural stuff. And I'm miserable smoking weed. Nothing is happening. So I was like, I need whatever that is, but I'm holding on to this. I don't want to lose more friends. And obviously I got over that. It's like, well, you know, the Bible even says this is if you were of the world would love you as their own, but you are not of the world. I have a residency, I have dual citizenship here and somewhere else. So the world's not going to like me and my opinions because I'm following the Lord. So yeah, my perspective has changed a lot. And I think also I have a deeper understanding of, like, as I mentioned, what is hate? So before I would say, well, Christians hate homosexuals. Okay, well, that's implying that you have a standard of hate. So how do you define hate? So are you saying that hate is you don't agree with my behavior? Well, we can say that about anyone. You know, there are things that people do in my family that I don't like, and I don't hate them. I disagree with what they do. So where is this idea coming from that because you decide to do this with the same sex and I disagree with that, I hate you? So I have that understanding. And then as far as like the Wiccan thing or someone who wants to pursue a homosexual life, it's like, okay, we all have free will to do whatever we want. So if the idea is that it's hateful to say that these people are going to go to hell if they don't repent, I think it's hateful to tell them that it's not going to happen. You know, because if I truly believe that there is a God, and I do believe that, my life is proof that how much it's changed, right?
Sure.
And if I truly believe that, it would be hateful for me not to warn them. You know, like that. And if these people don't want to love God on earth, why would they love God in the afterlife? Like, he's not going to force them to be, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's up to you what you want to do. But now I understand that it wasn't more so like, you know, Christians. I used to say Christians are forcing their beliefs on people. No, forcing would literally be like holding you down and saying, don't you ever do this. And that's not what happened. Like, I used to exaggerate, and a lot of people exaggerate.
Yeah. And well, interestingly, what's being forced on people now is different types of ideologies. Like, you know, having to, you know, a couple of years ago was to get a vax or whatever. Like, you know, those things were being forced onto people.
Yeah.
Or even the idea of like CRT now, or like, you know, certain ideas are being forced onto people without them even realizing it. They're like, oh, they don't even know they're the victim of actually being forced these radical ideas of, especially like, you know, Marxist ideas or like communist ideas or whatever else, like the fascistic ideas that are like being constantly like just bombarded with, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So I find it really fascinating that idea of like, you know, forced Christianity. Again, I come from a country, like I was born in an Islamic country where just being born there, I was called Muslim, right? Like just being born in that geographical area, I'm automatically deemed Muslim. So
that's crazy.
I didn't have a choice. Like it was just like, you're born a Muslim. And I'm like, well, why? You know, maybe I like Jesus, you know, and they're like, shut up, don't say that, or else you might die. Like we might kill you. And I'm like, oh God, I don't know. Real quick, before we move on to the next topic, I want to get this Rumble rant, big Rumble rant. Thank you so much from Patriotic Gas Doll. says you guys should team up regularly like Ripa and the Silverback. Thank you. That is a very nice compliment. I appreciate that. Those guys are awesome.
Is Silverback like as in gorilla?
Yeah, they call him that now.
That's amazing.
They call Az that because I think somebody called him a gorilla when like he was ranting about like pronouns in Starfield or whatever that game was. And like, you know how like his little rant that went viral. So somebody said like, oh, you look like a freaking gorilla. And then he just kind of owned that. He was like, that's right, baby. I'm like a white silverback. And like, you know, and he just became that. And
gorillas are tough. So was that an insult? Like, what do you?
Yeah. Gorilla. Oh, is that what it was? Gorilla shaped man.
That's funny.
That's the word. Yeah, there you go. That's what it was. Gorilla shaped man. And also John Burns, thank you for the 279. Says, oh my God, another woman's ranting stream. JK, love you now. Thank you. That's right. We love our women ranting. Also from John Burns 279, Arab Spring on Obama's watch got rid of Gaddafi. That's right, he did. That was wild. Like when they beheaded him and everything. That was crazy. And also a big shout out to Vermont Cheddars. He says my dad got cancer for the third time. And also followed up with, but Nina in the chat always make me feel better. Man, Vermont, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that. I just wanted to highlight that and say that that's rough. Like that's rough. And I'm going to pray for you. Well, I'm not Christian, but I still do pray because I believe in God. So I'm going to have you and your family in my thoughts because fuck cancer. Cancer sucks. It's a terrible thing. So then the other thing I want to talk to you about, I guess to wrap up the whole thing about the documentary though, fucking great documentary. Fantastic job. Yay.
Thank you.
Does it feel good? Are you glad it's over? Because somebody's not like following you around and like filming you anymore?
No, I mean, it's so weird because it was never like me doing a job or anything. It was just me hanging out with new friends that I was making along the way. No, I mean, I'm glad that it's done because now I'm excited to get the film out in front of people. Because I do think, it sounds biased of me saying this because it is my own documentary, but I truly believe it'll change a lot of people's minds on things. And I know for a fact that if people that have gone through the same stuff that I've gone through that don't realize like, hey, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to keep going, don't stop. But yeah.
And that was a big message. That was a big message of the documentary. And like, it had very emotional moments, but like the ending was so great. And it was a very uplifting and positive ending. And I really truly enjoyed it. So if you guys want to watch it, make sure you go to Lore TV. The link is in the description. And I believe it's code Gothix.
Yes.
There you go. This is it, you guys. Go and check it out. Lore TV on here. And if you sign up, I believe it's like 7 days for free. And then it gives you access to all their content on there. There's other stuff on there too. And then I think it's like $12 a month if you use
check
the
it
code.
out. It's a new platform. They're trying to do some good things on there. So take a look.
Do it. It's great. It's a good one. And again, the link is in the description. And you know what? I'm going to drop it in the chat right now. Gothix. I'm just going to put Gothix. Here is the link. Go and watch it. Okay. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with Elon Musk and Mark Cuban because they're going at it on Twitter. They're like, button heads because, well, first of all, Mark Cuban's a freaking retard. Excuse my language. But I mean, that guy's he's terrible. He's just a terrible person. And it's so bad too because I used to respect the guy greatly. Like I was a fan. Like, man, when when Mavericks won the NBA championships, I was all about Mark Cuban. I was like, yes, like he got Dirk Nowitzki. He knows what he's doing. He's a great businessman. He was on Shark Tank. He knows everything. Okay, this guy is freaking amazing. Fast forward to 2020. when this motherfucker started to like follow people around and like, you know, make sure that they're following COVID rules, and like he started sending like secret shoppers to places to make sure that everyone's following COVID rules and making sure that everyone on his team is vaccinated. And he had just the worst stance on COVID that you could ever find, which was completely against my beliefs. So I was like, you know what, fuck this guy. And then the more I started to like get to know him, when I changed as a person, I was just like, I'm starting to see so many different people on so many different lights. He became just awful. And now he's basically advocating for DEI. And Elon Musk doesn't agree. So the fight started because and it says Elon Musk calls out Mark Cuban over DEI. His hypocrisy convinces no one. And what happened was that they kind of started having this beef because of following the resignation of Harvard president Claudine Gay. Now, do you know about what happened with this person? The president of
she
Harvard?
was making excuses for like the campus genocide calls and stuff like that.
Yes, she was. And then what happened was they started to kind of like look into her though, and they found out that she had apparently plagiarized like a shit ton of her credentials, and therefore should never have had the job that she had. And so that was one of the biggest thing, was that they found out that she just never should have been hired as the position that she had. And so the conversation kind of like started online with Mark Cuban and Elon, where Mark Cuban was like, you know, Elon was saying Mark Cuban is desperately trying to signal his virtue, but his hypocrisy convinces no one. And then, you know, this guy named the rabbit hole said, I directly asked Mark Cuban whether he thinks it's okay for Asians to face discrimination in college admissions. Mark Cuban dodged the question and gave non-answer. I think that speaks volumes about his DEI aspiration worldview. I hope this is merely a misunderstanding, and that blah, 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 and that a group identity. Oh, no, wait. Yeah. So then Mark Cuban responded, you seem to believe that the ultimate goal of the university is to have the right admission policy. I wouldn't send my kids to a school that makes their goal. And he just kind of like kept doubling down on the whole DEI situation. And then of course, like, you know, Elon Musk is clapping back and telling him like he's not very smart, because when you want to run a company, what you want to be doing is hiring people for merit and not based on, you know, equity and like the color of your skin. And that's literally racism. Like the definition of racism is to like give people opportunities because of the color of their skin, not because they've actually earned it. So there was also this little bit here where Elon posted this about Mark Cuban, and I was like, oh God, this is exactly what these people do. They just constantly project. So Elon says, this explains why Mark Cuban's ridiculous overcompensation regarding racism. The thing happened with Me Too and the guys who got busted suddenly becoming fake, ardent feminists. So this is what Mark had to say.
I know I'm prejudiced. I know I'm bigoted in a lot of different ways. You know, and I've said this before, if I see a black kid in a hoodie at night on the other side of the street, that's not, you know, I'm probably on the same side of the street, I'm probably going to walk to the other side of the street. I know I'm prejudiced. I know I'm bigoted.
So there you go. Like from his own words, like he's like super racist dude. And he's just like, yeah, like that's what I do on a daily basis. I, you know, judge people by the color of their skin, and you know, I'll just walk across the street because if a black person is in a hoodie, they're gonna make me feel uncomfortable. And it's like, man, dude, Mark, that's what's in your heart and in your vision. Like that is what's going on. This is a you problem, not an everybody else problem. And so I guess I'm wondering what you think of all this DEI stuff, and do you agree? I think I know the answer, but do you agree that DEI is dumb as shit.
It's dumb as shit.
Yeah,
It's absolutely dumb. First of all, if I go for a late night walk by myself and I see someone walking in a hoodie towards me, I'm crossing the street.
Yeah.
I don't know you. You have a sketchy uniform on and it's dark out. Okay.
Yeah. No matter what color your skin
Doesn't
is,
matter. I see a hoodie, I'm out. Yeah, no, it's stupid because this DEI stuff, it's really they're trying to. It's like people are trying. I don't know how to describe this. Like, okay, I used to think also, like, because I mentioned earlier about how social justice people will think that they can fix a spiritual problem with political action. And so some people think as long as I have more diversity workshops or more, resources and all of these representation, whatever, if I do all of these things, we're going to somehow eradicate a heart problem from society. And it does not work like that. The only reason why he's pushing DEI, in my opinion, is either someone is blackmailing him or he's cashing in a paycheck, maybe both. I don't truly believe he actually believes the nonsense that he's saying. I think this guy worships the god of money or the god of prominence. And if he wants to stay in those positions, he's going to repeat the same thing because these things just don't work. I don't know anyone who has done anything related to DEI that has ended up making them a better person. I remember I got into an argument with one of my family members at Thanksgiving dinner, and she started screaming about white supremacy, this and all that stuff. And I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to hang out, eat some turkey. But she's so angry. And I'm like, this is what this does to people's brains.
Wow. It really does. It like freaking rots it's like what actually Elon Musk says, like the woke mind virus, right? Like it totally rots your brain. This is, it also was there was another thing that Mark Cuban was saying was with regards to DEI was that he was saying that it was working, for example, because somebody brought up, and somebody in the chat brought it up too, that they were doing like the one of the airlines was practicing in this practice like DEI, and Elon was like, dude, like we need to be hiring like good pilots so they don't crash the freaking plane. Like it shouldn't depend on the color of the skin. And basically Mark Cuban came back with like not in so many words, but he's like, you don't really get what DEI is, Elon, like you should just do a little bit of research. And like basically what happens is like they go through like a lot of vetting before they're picked to, actually become pilots or whatever. Like, there's this like a system in place that like if you follow it, it actually does work and like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, if it does work, then why are there so many freaking incompetent people in places of power right now? I don't get what Mark, like, or people like Mark, like, is that some sort of cope? Like, are you trying to like either like convince yourself, or are you trying to convince us that this thing works when we know absolutely it does not work?
I mean, I think it's like the sunken cost fallacy. He's invested so much into this lie that he's just gonna keep doubling down because he's invested so much. He has too much pride. It takes a lot for people to admit that they're wrong about something. And I think for the right amount of money, you can keep up a lie for a while. But yeah, like you said, with the airline thing, if a plane starts going down, I doubt Mark Cuban is going to be like, who's black? You know what I mean? They're going to ask, who can fly the plane?
The plane. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Real quick, let me get the super chat here from John Byrne. Says for $13.99, Critical Drinker had a video about a new director of Star Wars being female. There was a quote, "I like making men feel awkward, but since it was about a documentary about honor killings, it's good." I'm glad you brought her up, John Burns, because actually I was going to bring her up in this context of DEI. Now, I'm not sure, because I know you're not really into like the entertainment news too much anymore. So have you even heard about the new kind of like the lady that they're saying that might, well, they're saying she is the next director of Star Wars, the Rey film that they're planning on making. Have you heard about this lady? Her
I've
name is
never watched
Charlene.
Star Wars, but I think I've heard of this woman.
You've never watched Star Wars, just generally
No.
speaking, like ever?
Ever. And I feel like there's just so much investment that I would need to do to catch up.
Wait, what about your husband? Like, has he ever watched Star Wars?
I think he's watched it, yeah.
And he hasn't made you watch it? Like,
No, man.
If you're watching Gothix's husband, get on it and get her to watch it. It's one of the best movies of all time. I mean, like Empire Strikes Back is one of the best movies of all time. You should at least watch the first 3, like the trilogy. Just at the very least.
All right. The first 3. Okay.
Just
But
the
if they
first 3.
suck, I'm coming back.
And then you're out.
With a stern letter.
That's fine.
Okay.
You were allowed. You were allowed. That is completely acceptable. You don't even have to watch the prequels. Just watch the original like 70s versions with like Mark Hamill, like all the good ones, the original. And then if you like it, of course, like move on to the prequels, but then stop. Do not go to Disney Star Wars ever again. Okay,
Okay, that's when it went downhill.
Yeah, like no, nothing with Disney Star Wars. So, but now Disney has basically essentially destroyed Star Wars. And now, like, fast forward to, because I mean, I'm out on Star Wars too, but they want to give the new Star Wars movie to this lady who's an extreme feminist. And it's this lovely person here. And this is what John Burns was referring to. And she said this.
What is the balance of activating a force for change, but also trying to permeate that patriarchy, that power structure? And is that a part of the calculation of your art as well? And what's been the reaction to that?
Oh, absolutely. I like to make men uncomfortable. I enjoy making men uncomfortable. Not you, just not you. Not you.
Point taken. Point taken.
But it is important to be able to look into the eyes of a man and say, I am here, and recognize that. And recognize that I am working to bring something that makes you uncomfortable, and it should make you uncomfortable because you need to change your attitude. And it's only when you're uncomfortable, when you're shifty, when you have to have difficult conversations, that you will perhaps look at yourself in the mirror and not like the reflection, and then say, maybe there is something wrong with the way I think, or maybe there is something wrong with the way I am addressing this issue.
Now, so this is what John was referring to. And by her own admission, she's a documentarian, actually. And she has basically only worked on like kind of like Middle Eastern documentaries where she's, trying to bring attention to very bad things happening in the Middle East to women, which do happen. Like that is important work, and she should have done it, and she should be doing it. But that is a whole different beast and ball game when it comes to directing stuff like that and using your activism and whatever it is that she also claims that she only does is use activism in her medium. It's a different beast to make a documentary about stuff that's going on in the injustices going on in the Middle East or anywhere on the planet, to taking over an insanely popular male-dominated franchise that is called Star Wars. So I feel like this is one of those cases where, like, I wonder if this is a DEI case.
It is.
Where, where Disney's like, we need to check some boxes. Brown woman, feminist. Oh, by the way, she works for like the World Economic Forum.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. World Economic Forum, check. Brown woman, check. Activist, check. All these things, check. Let's give her a fucking Star Wars movie. And what are we going to end up with? Do you think we're going to end up with a good Star Wars movie?
I think, the thing is I am just, because I've read a lot of communist books and I understand what they're up to. And this is all part of the plan. They don't actually I don't think they're anticipating that, oh, this is going to sell lots of movies. We're going to make so much money doing this. I think they know this movie's going to bomb. It's going to piss off the fan base. And that's okay because we're still being funded from a different source and not our primary consumer base. So they're just going to keep pumping it out because there is an incentive on the back end of it. And so these people, they just want to destroy art. They want to make it ugly. You know, if you're trying to inject social justice into Star Wars to make men uncomfortable because men need to change their perception about women or their attitude about women, well, if a man thinks women are annoying, you're just going to cause that man to continue thinking that women are annoying by ruining
You're not
their
helping.
favorite movie.
Yeah, you're not helping the situation. Like,
doesn't make sense. Like with her in particular, because there's sort of like layers to this these communist tactics that they use when they infiltrate different areas of society. So like the higher ups probably know the full story, but the people like directing, the people on set, the writers, I don't necessarily believe that they're in on the bigger picture. They probably think we're going to change the world by injecting social justice into this movie. But the people paying them probably have a better idea of what the end goal is.
Right. I just found the clip of her where she's talking about her credentials. Let me play this because this is funny. Here we go.
Thing at the heart of everything, I am a storyteller and an activist. And my body of work over the last 20 years has been guided by my activism. And every single piece of work that I've ever created has a piece of activism in it. It could be very overt or it could be covert, but it is there. And I think that as a storyteller, I'm not sure if all of you know this, but I'm not a trained filmmaker. So I never went to film school. Went to Smith College and did my undergraduate and studied economics and political science like a good Pakistani girl. And then I did my graduate studies, but also in international politics. And so I am an accidental filmmaker. Thing at the heart of everything, I am a storyteller.
Give this woman the Star Wars franchise. I mean,
let's use this in a different scenario. I injected activism in all of the jobs that I've had when I worked at McDonald's, when I worked at the call center. I've never flown a plane, but today so stupid. You're
Put
dumb.
me behind that wheel. I will land that plane because I'm black, is what you'll be saying.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Like, this is, I mean, we grew up in a time, like in the 80s and stuff, like people actually had to be good at their job, man. Like, cause it wasn't like we didn't have like AI or like things to just bail us out of whatever, you know, like we actually had to do good. Like you had to actually go to flight school and pass all the fucking tests. Like you had to actually take the plane, like out and like, you know, land the plane. Like they didn't do like digital stuff, you know, like it wasn't like even digital learning. It was like actual learning. You ride or die, like for real. Like you will die on this plane if you don't land it properly. But now we've come full circle to a point where we're just like handing off giant franchises. So people who've never been to film school or have any credentials ever, you know, being in the movie industry to begin with. Like, I mean, like I said, I'm glad she was making the documentary she was making because those are important work. Documentaries are important, as we saw with yours. That's important work. And if that's what she's passionate about, and that's what she should be doing. But I don't get it from Disney's point of view until you said what you said about, hey man, these people don't care about making money.
They don't care.
Yeah, like that's I guess that's the part that a lot of us have really like I have a hard time grasping it. Gothix.
I feel bad because my husband in particular, he's a big comic book fan. He loves all like the comic book stuff, and I'll just hear him ranting about like, did you see what they did to this? They ruined this, and I'm like, yeah. I think he's coming to terms with it now. But it's sort of like I understand because a lot of people like that's your whole outlet, like that's your hobby. This is something that you grew up with, and you're just watching all of these things get destroyed. And it's like, you know, you got to cling on to the memory of these characters because they're going to drive it to the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to have fun doing it too. It's a sad state. It's a sad state, but at least like people like Eric July are cleaning up the freaking comic book industry. What do we got for Star Wars? Nothing. Nothing. Like Star Wars is gone. It's dead. And now they're trying to, you know, beat a freaking dead horse. John Burns, thank you for the 279. She hasn't watched Dark Matter or Star Wars. John. John, some people don't have interest in sci-fi. That's okay. Like they're allowed to not like certain things. For 279 again from John Burns, 1975 to 90, people worked on cocaine. That's true. That is true. Sometimes I feel like maybe we should bring back cocaine to filmmaking, just filmmaking in general, because I think they were making a lot of good movies in the 80s and 90s. And is that what happened? Did they lose cocaine? I don't know what happened.
I don't think if cocaine is I mean, if it's there, it's probably still there.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was it's all this other junk that happened. Now, just to give you some perspective too, like with regards to the Star Wars lady, and then you can go to your husband and be like, look, I have so much knowledge about Star Wars now because I hung out with Mia, and he'll be impressed. He'll be like, oh, that's impressive. That's impressive knowledge. But okay, so this is what they're saying about her in the news.
Also the first woman and the first person of color to direct a Star Wars film. It's set to be released in 2026. You can say that the force is strong with this one. Here's Sharmina Bechinoy.
You know, I'm very thrilled about the project because I think what we are about to create is something very special. And we're in 2024 now. And I think it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away.
All right. So the reason this is triggering for someone like me, Gothix, again, you know, because I'm a fan of the franchise. I know that many women work to shape the Star Wars story, including George Lucas's wife, who helped edit and won an Oscar for editing one of the best movies of all time, Star Wars. That's a second one. So he, she won an Oscar for that. So there's been many women, and just a few years ago, they were talking about Patty Jenkins leading the first Star Wars movie as a female director, and nobody really cared because everybody was like, oh, okay, we'll see if it actually happens, and never did. But you know, people were kind of like, but nobody even talked about her being like the first director, and like nobody really made a big deal out of it. But now we're here, and like all of a sudden, this woman is just, it's a constant, like, she's the first woman. She's the first brown woman to do it. And we're all like, well, no, there's been a lot of women doing it. And what are we supposed to do? Like, it's so insultive to the industry and to this franchise when you take away the accomplishments that these women have achieved. It's weird. It's a weird
I
thing.
mean, I definitely can understand though, because I sort of was dealing with the same thing when people were talking about the Ariel thing. Oh, we made it. Representation. Wow. It's like, you made it by redoing something that already existed. So you recycled something that already existed. And now you're implying that now you need representation in Hollywood as if black faces haven't already existed. That is insulting. And I think the people that take these roles, they're responsible in their own particular way too, because they know, like, you know, that women have had a hand in dealing with Star Wars before. So for you to say, I am the first person of color, female, to be a part of it. No, you know. And I think they're not saying anything about it because going back to what I said earlier about some people worship attention. They long to be wanted and accepted and admired. And it sounds good to have people say, wow, you're a part of Star Wars and you're a woman and you're a person of color, you know? So it's like, there's too much at stake for them to say, well, actually, I'm not the first. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound as good. They don't feel as special.
Well, to like, just to counter that point though, is I almost feel like I don't think she does know. Like that's the thing. Like because yeah, because she comes from such a different background of filmmaking. I feel like she's actually just like you, Gothix. I don't think she's ever watched a single Star Wars movie or perhaps even a sci-fi in her life because she comes from like Pakistan. She has such a different perspective and all her life has been spent to bring attention to that kind of stuff. I don't even think she has an interest in sci-fi. So I feel like
so you think her worldview is like Star Wars movie, only men worked on it.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I do. I think so. I think she thinks she is the first woman ever to even be in like involved with Star Wars. Like she's like, wait, like, oh, like, I don't even think she's watched the first one to be like, oh, there's a woman in it. Like there's a princess in it. You know what I mean? Like I don't think this person knows what Star Wars is. And that's why it's so shocking because it's like as if we're giving the keys to like all these different things to people who are absolutely undeserving of it. Like they're just so like they just don't know anything about it. And it just constantly happens, seems to be constantly happening over and over. Like, and I think that's what the whole DEI thing is. It's basically promoting people who have absolutely no idea what the fuck they're doing. But just because they fit the bill, like, oh, we want to make her like, you know, brown and we want the next Star Wars film to be directed by a brown woman who's been an activist all her life and, you know, wants to bring activism to Star Wars. Like that's it. That's the resume. Not I've always like loved Star Wars. Like, you know, when I was interviewed for my Nintendo job, I had a job in Nintendo Canada. One of the first things she asked me was, have you ever played any Nintendo games? You know? And like my answer was like, of course I've played Nintendo games. Okay, name some, you know, and what was your favorite game? You know, and of course I have answers. And what was your favorite part of the game? You know, of course I have answer. I don't think this woman was even asked like ever, like, have you ever watched a Star Wars movie? I don't think the answer would be yes. I don't even think they asked her. They were just probably like, box. You're good to go. You're in. Oh, and you're part of the World Economic Forum. You are in. Like that's it. That's the one. Check her IMDb. I have. Her IMDb is like literally here, Charmine Olbeck. I forget how do you spell her name. Choi. Charmine something. IMDb. There it is. It's like literally all weird documentaries. Is this hers? Hold on. This is not hers because her picture is not on there. Why is there? Hold on. Let me find it. I gotta get her actual name. Where was it? Charmine. Oh, wait. Obaid Chinoy. That's what it is. Obaid Chinoy. There it is. Okay. IMDb. Okay, here it is. Her IMDb is literally like just all. This one's her main one, Saving Face. Sitara, Let Girls Dream. A Journey of 1,000 Miles Apiece. A Girl in the River. The Price of Forgiveness. I think that's basically it. Like, I mean, again, not that there's anything wrong with that. You need to make movies like this to show what's going on in different places in the world. I think that's one of the things she won her Oscar for, was one of these movies. I forget which one, but it's not that we don't need those things. We do, but we don't need that in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars should be directed by someone who loves Star Wars, who cares
Right.
about Star Wars, who wants to like add their voice to it and not shame men for existing,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. It would
And-
be nice.
And also, like, so Star Wars, is it based in the future? Or is it based
It's
in a different
based in a
dimension?
galaxy far, far away.
Okay. So it's not reality.
No, it literally says the first sentence of Star Wars is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Okay.
So
you're
and that's the
injecting
story.
current things into a galaxy far, far away that probably
Yes.
doesn't have the same things to talk about.
Yes, exactly. Where you're basically thinking to yourself, when you watch a Star Wars movie, you're as far from Earth as you could possibly get because you're in another galaxy, far,
Yeah.
far away. There's no time, there's no space, there's no nothing. And so that's the kind of thing that it just really, really bothers me about
There's
it.
always time to talk about feminism in a different galaxy, okay? How dare you?
We must take feminism to every galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Goodness.
right. You are right. Thank you, Gothix, for correcting me.
Mm.
John Burns, thank you for the 279. She's a director. She doesn't have to write. That's true. But we still want someone with a vision of a galaxy far, far away. It would be nice. It would be nice, John. Gothix, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this evening. Before we go, tell everyone where they can find you and what you got coming up next, and promote your documentary one more time.
Yes. You guys can find me on YouTube. Just search Gothix TV. You can watch my documentary on lore.tv. And if you use code Gothix, you can get a 7-day trial to watch it now. And if you end up watching it, please leave a review on Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb. If you want to have me on your channel to talk about it, we can do that. Got to get the word out, As for what I'm up to, tomorrow I'm going to be on Pop Culture Crisis. I'm taking a flight tomorrow, actually. And yeah, that's about it. That's all I got going on.
You're gonna go be in person interview?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I like
Very
the
cool.
show. It's always a good time.
That's awesome. Okay, so check that out. And obviously Gothix's channel, including the link to the documentary and everything, is in the description. Make sure you follow her on all of the stuff. Any parting words before we leave? Is there anything else you want to say?
Parting words. Wash your ass. Everyone, not just you, Nina. I think that's good hygiene is important. Take a break from social media. Go outside, touch some grass. And, read some books instead of some tweets, recalibrate your brain.
That's really good. Those are really good, nice parting words. Thank you everyone for watching tonight. You guys have been fantastic. Special thanks to those of you who super chatted, became a member, gifted memberships, all that good stuff. Thank you for supporting the channel. And thank you also for watching on Rumble and for the Rumble Ranters. You guys are awesome. Thank you. And until next time, catch you later. Bye.